Hi guys, it's Andrew here from Eastonmade Wood Splitters today, and I'm going to do a video that I've been really reluctant to do. The only reason for that is because I really don't know that much about chainsaws. I get comments all the time about how well the saw cuts and how fast it cuts, and people are always wondering what kind of modifications and stuff are done to them. Honestly, nothing. This saw here is a bone stock 372. I've got not a thing done to it. It's exactly the way it came out of the box. It's a 3 or 4 year old saw. It's half wore out already. And then my other saw is a 562. I just normally, you'll see me run in a handful of videos, and then I normally use a 562 just for around the bush because it's a nice light saw and it's got lots of power. So that being said, you pick a few things up here and there along the way. Guys, I'm gonna stop the video right there. I want to know how you guys do this, how you guys file your saws, how you sharpen them. As I get further into this, as I learn more about it, it's interesting to see how many people file saws and sharpen them different ways. Let me know below how you do it, and if I'm doing something wrong here, or if I can do something better, let me know. Because like I said, it's so great that we've built this community around our product that can help people out. So if you have an idea, or if you know something I don't, by all means, let us know. Drop a comment below. Thanks. My dad, if you, in the last video, the Tumbler video, you seen that he actually owns Bell's Fiber Processors. Before Dad bought Bell's Machine Shop, he was a logging contractor. My dad was a logger. That's what Dad did for a living for years. He was at it for 30 years. Had all sorts of different equipment. He had bunters, slashers, skidders, log trucks, bulldozers, excavators, you name it, Dad had it. So I worked in the bush a handful of years there, and I knew it wasn't for me, so I took the mechanical route, and that's why I'm here today. That being said, you do pick up on things. I can't tell you the different names of stuff, I can't tell you the theory behind it, but I'm going to try and tell you is what I know, because like I said, this is a bone stock saw. And the biggest thing I found with it is it's got to be sharp, and it's got to be filed right. If it's not, you haven't got a hope in that saw cutting, not even a little bit. And I've done this a handful of different ways. Like, I've tried to use chain grinders and stuff, and I'll tell you, I just wreck the chain. I can't run a chain grinder. Like there's some guys out there that run them and are amazing with them. Like Jeremy Cole from Razor Sharp, I think he does a fantastic job with them. Great guy. Myself, I can't. I'm a file guy. I use a round file and I use a flat file for taking down the rakers. I don't know the difference in a skip tooth chain or any other chain, or chisel tooth or square tooth. I have no idea. This is what I picked up at my local saw shop. So, and like I said, the saw is a 3 or 4 year old saw. Nothing done with it. It's completely bone stock. Not even very well maintained, if I be truthful. It doesn't get a whole lot of love. It kind of gets thrown around and banged around and left out on the rock in the wood yard just because it's a saw. And that's what we do with chainsaws, I guess. To me, they're a tool. I'm not a chainsaw guy. There's absolutely no excitement there for me at all. But however, if you are, that's fantastic. That's great. I gotta say, I do like watching chainsaws cut. I've never had a huge interest in them. They were always a tool that was in the back of the truck. So same as a wrench or a pair of pliers. So anyways, here's what I know. Here's how to make one of these things cut. Rule number 1, a round file. Make sure it's the right size file. Different chains have different files they use. Make sure you have the right chain or the right file for the chain that you're using. Number 2, you can't make a chainsaw sharp with the dull file. You never will. Not even any point in trying. If that thing's dull, you will never ever possibly make that chainsaw sharp. These things are cheap. Get a box of them, you're good to go. I can't tell you how many times I file a saw with one of these things before I throw it out, because I honestly don't know. When the file stops cutting well, I throw it out. If you can't hear it taking material out, if it doesn't feel like it's taking material out, I just throw it out. It's a consumable. That one there is a flat file. I use that to take the rakers down. There are gauges for rakers. I'm gonna go into the raker thing here a little bit more in depth. Don't take my word for it. Like I said, this is just how I do it. Rakers are a dangerous thing to play with. If you take them down too far, you're gonna have this thing kick like a mule, and it's not safe. However, I will show you what I do and how I do them. Like I said, I don't use a raker gauge. They do exist. I think they likely work fantastic. I've never used one. I don't even know what one looks like. I don't know how to use one. I've never played with that. And the two things, the couple things you got to think about here. Yeah, I'm gonna even try and illustrate this for you. I don't know. Here, I'll see if I can get that back on here. So hopefully I've got that focused in okay here. I'm gonna try and get her maybe a little clearer for you. I don't really know how to get that in there. Buck and Billy's got some for the fancy eye for doing this. Okay, so you can see here what this is doing. You gotta look at the shape of this thing. Now I know that there is some guys that will file these square. I really don't know how to do that, guys. I don't. But if you look at this, it's gonna take the piece of wood off that corner and it's gonna come all the way down to the bottom here. If that isn't there, if you have this, say, filed straight, what's gonna happen is that chip's gonna come down and it's gonna hit that. It's gonna hit that square edge that you've put in there. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they call that the gullet down in here. If you don't have that cut away, what's gonna happen is that chip's gonna cut off. Your chainsaw's moving along this way. It's gonna start peeling the piece of wood. It's gonna come in here and then back out. If it hits something there, that chip's gonna break before you want it to. It's not gonna take as big of a chip out. That's the name of the game here. This is a chainsaw. This chainsaw chain, think of this as a wood planer. If you've ever seen a hand wood planer, that's exactly what a chainsaw is. It is a wood planer. Nothing more fancy than that, guys. This is a manual wood planer. If you've ever seen like a hand planer, you're planing along, big curly coming out of it. That's what we have here. It's just a whole bunch of them. That's all it is. You just a wood planer, a wood planer, a wood planer. That's all they are. So it's got to be able to curl a big chip out of there. So if you have something, like I said, down in here, that's going to hit to prematurely break off that chip, it's just not going to work. You're not going to get a big chip. It's just going to come down. It's going to hit that gullet, I guess is what they call it. It's going to hit that, then it's going to break. It's going to break before you have a big chip. So that's what's going to happen. The other thing you got to watch here is the edges here. So I don't know if you can see the little line there. I always follow the line. Some guys will say for softwood a little bit more of an angle. Some guys will say for hardwood a little bit less of an angle. I just follow the line. I can do this fancy. I can try and make this more complicated than what it needs to be. I just follow the line. The other thing I gotta watch here is the corners of your tooth. It's gonna start cutting right here. If that corner of that tooth is burred or marred or is messed up in any way, that isn't going to bite into the piece of wood. It's not actually going to be able to get under the wood to actually start taking the chip out of there. So if that one corner isn't sharp, if it's got folded over, if it's got a burr on it, if it's marred up, it just won't work. Like it can't. It's just like doing this. As hard as I want to push that file into that table, it's just not going to grab on and it's not going to pull a chip out of it. It's that simple. It can't. Had to close the door there, guys. So the other part of this is the other edge. if you look at this edge here, this one, it needs to be sharp. Like it has to be sharp. And the way you tell if that edge is sharp is you just take your file and put it in there. It's that simple. Put your file in there, and hopefully you can see that. But this edge, the cutting edge here, the part of the tooth that actually is gonna cut, you can see is actually touching the file. It's not sticking ahead of it like that. It's actually touching the file. So what I've seen a lot of guys do is that they'll file the saw, like they'll go ahead and they'll file the tooth, but they don't actually get the tooth. They get the shape and everything right, but they don't actually get the edge of it. Like they'll have it in there, and then their tooth will be just kind of, it won't actually be touching the file. And obviously that's not gonna work. It's gotta be right. When you put that in there, that file has to be able to sit in there. The edge of the tooth has to be touching the actual tooth, because other than that, it's just not gonna be sharp. The last step of this, like that's honestly, like that's about all I can tell you on it. I'm sure there's guys out there that can go way more in depth with this and tell you way more information with it. I believe in the KISS theory, guys. Keep it simple. This is a chainsaw. She's not a complicated piece of equipment. But the other step of this, the other part of this that people, I think, don't get or don't understand or don't realize is the raker. If that raker is not the right height, you'll never, you can't get it to cut. And I'll show you what I mean. So if you look at that raker is a guide for how deep that cuts. You can take that right off, and then you'll see that tooth will take a great big chunk out of there. And it goes to say the same for going the other way. Like if you look at that, that's pretty well straight across there. I think maybe try and get it as straight as it can. Probably something like that. Hopefully you can see that. That tooth is just slightly above what the raker is. So as this chainsaw wears, as you file this down, this is going to come back and down further and down further and down further. And what's going to happen is there's going to come a point where this is actually below this. And then, like when your tooth is below your raker. At that point, there's no hope. You're never, ever going to get that into the wood because this is in front of it. So you'll never get it to happen. The way that I do this, like I said, there is raker gauges, there's files, there's all sorts of nifty little tools for this. I've never used them. I don't know how to use them. I've never done it. This is how I do it. What I will do is I will make sure that tooth is sharp. I'll make sure it is right. That's number one. Second, you'll go and you'll put this into the wood. And if the chainsaw is revving, if it's screaming and it's not taking a bite, then I'll take a stroke off the raker. One stroke, you don't need much more than that. If one stroke, it's still not making the saw work a wee bit, if it's not biting a wee bit, take another stroke. Don't take too many strokes. This is very critical, very important, because if you take too much out of that, when you go to put it up this way, excuse me, that saw is gonna kick like a mule. It will. If you're putting this in here, and that saw is pulling hard into the wood, you've gone too far. You done messed up, Ron. You've gone too far with it. If it's actually pulling into the wood to the point where it's pulling up against the dogs here, and it's biting in, you've gone too far with the raker. It doesn't need to be down that far. Like the way that this is designed is to pull itself into the wood. It should be gentle. You should just be able to get the saw off of its peak raft, because what'll happen there's two things that'll happen. It's dangerous. You're gonna have a kickback with it. The other thing that's gonna happen is when you take too much out of that, when you're going down into your wood like this, and you have too much out of that, it's gonna take too much horsepower from your saw. Obviously, a saw with more horsepower, you're gonna be able to get away with more, but it's gonna take too much horsepower from your saw, and then this thing here slows down. That chain has to move. If it's not running as fast as it can, it's not going to take out wood as fast as it can. It won't. It can't. So you want to be able to get that to the point where it's just pulling the saw down on its revs, just ever so slightly, and then you've got it. You know that's where it's got to be. Now, another incredibly critical part of this, and a lot of guys miss, is this thing here. It has to stay put. If that saw's flopping around, you're trying to hold it between your knees. If that's moving, you will never get that to go in the exact same position every single time. You never will. It's impossible. You'll never do it. Like, put it up against the edge of your tailgate. If you're out in the woods, the edge of your tailgate works fantastic. Just jam it in there. It's gonna hold it. Are you gonna put a mark in your box side? Yep. But I'll tell you, most wood trucks look like that. At least all the ones that I've been around, because that's as good a spot as any. It's the right height. It works well. To try and do this on a stump, yeah, you can do it. 100% you can. Done it lots. Common practice, but you got to make sure that this thing isn't moving and flopping around on you. If that saw's moving and flopping around on you, it's going to make the job so much more difficult. I know they have like stump vices and stuff like that, guys. I've never really used them. Even if you have another piece of wood or something, you can jam up against it while you're stroking across it, just to hold it even. I mean, it's really hard to get it consistent if this thing's moving around. Your file's going to be going through there like a worm. You might as well give up. You're gonna make it a little bit better, but you're not gonna make it a whole lot better. So that's a very, very, very important part of that, is to make sure that bar is in one spot. It's not moving around. It's not flopping around. It's gonna make your life a lot harder. Obviously, guys that are experienced with it, the guys that have been in the woods, that have run chainsaw slots, that have been doing this for years, it's no problem filing one on a stump. You're not gonna have any issues. But if you're a guy that's maybe just getting into this one to hand file, that hasn't done a whole lot of it, make sure that stays still. You'll never do it any other way until you actually learn what this has got to look like and work like. To do that on a stump, you're gonna have a hard time with it. Can you? Yep. But it's a lot harder. And this leads us into our next point. You have two hands for a reason. Some guys can do this fantastic with one hand. Hats off to you. I can't. If I try to file with one hand, don't point at me trying. I can't hold the file straight enough. It just wobbles around. You can't do it. This has got to be a perfectly straight linear motion. If there's any wobble in it, what you're gonna get is your tooth is actually gonna. So that's the edge of your tooth there. It's gonna have a wobble in it like that. Because that's exactly what your file's doing. It has to be straight. Because what will happen is if it's high here, I'll show you over here. If it's high in the middle here, then that's going to come across there, and instead of cutting, it's going to hit that high spot and it's going to break that chip off, and then you're going backwards again. So to you guys out there that can do this one hand and have success with it, I've seen lots of guys that can. Hats off to you. That's a skill all on its own. I can't do that. I have to have two hands in the file. I can't. One hand steadies the other. I'm the same thing with welding. If I'm welding, I weld with two hands. I can't hold the other hand steady enough to actually weld straight without having to shake in it. You gotta steady yourself on something. You can't. There's some guys that can. Like I said, there's lots of guys out there that are that gifted, that are that coordinated, that are that talented, that can do that. This guy isn't one of them. Two hands in the file, you'll save yourself a lot of aggravation. So I hope that helps a handful of guys out. Like I said, I get a lot of questions about how how these saws cut so well. I'm not a rocket scientist here, guys. I'm not. I'm not. I don't really know that much about this stuff. But this is what I do know, and this is what works for me, and it's worked for a long time for me. And that's how you make a completely stock 372 Husky, half worn out, nothing done to it, ill-maintained saw, actually cut well. There's a handful of other things that you need to be aware of. Like when you go to file this, don't be filing one tooth 35 strokes and then the next one 2. I know some guys do. I don't. If I file one 3 strokes, I try to file the next one 3 strokes. Because what'll happen is you'll end up having this tooth cut way back, and then this tooth will be way up here, and then it's really hard to gauge your rakers, how much to take off them. It's really hard to. Like I said, a raker gauge will probably solve that problem for you. That's going to fix that. I can almost guarantee a raker gauge is you're gonna get the rakers down to exactly where they've got to be. I guess that would be the application for it. I don't use one. And that's just how I try and keep the teeth all the same. If you got a chain grinder, it doesn't matter. You're gonna have all the teeth the exact same anyways, because when this is stepping ahead, it's gonna step ahead so much. Each tooth, and every tooth should be exactly the same. I've never had any luck with a chain grinder. I've tried them. Some guys have fantastic luck with them. I'm not one of them. I use a chain grinder. You'll never see a man wreck a chain as fast as I can with a chain grinder, believe me. So that's what to do with that anyways, guys. Take the same amount off each tooth. And the other thing you gotta watch for too is if you have that chain too tight, it's gonna wear that bar prematurely. Obviously you're always gonna get a little bit of wear with it, but if you can feel the edge of that bar down here, it has a burr on it, you've got to take that off. Obviously it takes an awfully big burr to affect this greatly, but if you look at this, if you have a burr on your bar that sticks out just a little bit too much, I don't know if you can see that. If you have a burr that sticks out here, the edge of that tooth won't cut then. If you actually look at the chainsaw chain, the tooth is just a little wee bit wide in the bar. Not very much, just enough that there's clearance for the bar to actually slide down through your piece of wood. So if you have a burr on that, then your cutter can't cut. And that's what'll happen is you'll have a burr on one side of your bar, and then it'll keep that one side of the bar from actually cutting. That's you get a banana then. And if you've ever put a banana into a wood splitter, they don't work very well. You gotta have that cut square. It's gotta be, the square you have that cut, the nicer it's gonna go through there. You're not gonna be going across the grain, you're gonna be going straight through it. If you have a single wedge, it's not gonna matter. You're just gonna go with the grain anyways. If you have a multi-wedge, you have a 6-way, an 8-way, a 12-way, and you put a banana into that, what happens to that block of wood is it goes in there like this, and then all of a sudden it goes like that, and then it's not long before you're not splitting with the grain of that piece of wood. You're not going to. You're going to be cutting across the grain, and it's just way harder to split a block sideways than it is to actually split it with the grain. I think that's probably enough rambling for today, guys. I really don't know how this video is going to turn out. Like I said, I've been reluctant to do this because I really don't know that much about saws, guys. I don't. I'm a mechanic. Dad was a logger. These are just a few things that I've picked up along the way. I don't even know if I think I've watched maybe a handful of Buchan's chainsaw sharpening videos. I don't know if I've ever watched any other ones. Other than that, I've watched a handful of them, and like I said, it's just stuff that I've learned from experience. Nobody's really showed me how to do this. This is one of those things when you're back in the bush, you just learn to do, or else you're going to be really aggravated. So hope you liked the video, guys. Give her a like and subscribe if you like it, and I really appreciate all the support, guys. You guys have been fantastic. I really appreciate everything that everybody's been doing for me. That's people that have been here since the start. New subscribers that are coming from other channels. New subscribers that are just finding us out of the blue. I do really appreciate it. And it's great to be able to build a product around or build a community around our product, and have people help one another out. That's really good. If we can bounce ideas off one another and learn as we go, because some people may have not ever been around this stuff. I was fortunate enough that I grew up with this. This is all I know. This is what I've done my whole life. So the folks that haven't, that want to get into it, then it's nice for them to learn and find out, and hopefully save them some aggravation that we've already gone through. So anyways, guys, thanks so much. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one.